Once again, we bring back the chaos monkey that is Mr. Josh Brewer and his lovely sidekick, Donna Mr. Johnson. I don't know. I was trying to think of a name for you. Donna Johnson. Donna Johnson is here.
It's got a good flow.
It's Mr. Aaron Johnson. That's what he's going to name kid number 1. If it's a girl, Donna.
No, it's not.
Oh,
it's Diane.
Diane.
Okay.
Okay.
Diane.
No, it's Karen.
I don't want dirty Diana in my house.
What?
What? This song. I always think of that song when I hear Diana.
I don't know that song.
It's a Michael Jackson song, I think.
Okay.
Dirty Diana or something like that. Yeah.
Don't know it off the top of my head.
Sniff your powder.
Okay.
Wow, that could sound bad in the wrong. Regardless of the fact, like I said, we have Chaos Monkey here for number 2. Yay, Chaos Monkey in full gear. And this one, I am sure the Chaos Monkey will have much to say on, because, oh boy, I know he will have much to say on. When I wrote up the notes for it, this is what I wrote. I said, media on both sides just sucks. And the reason I say that, primarily media now is not, it seems, it's not so much for handing out facts. It's more for how can I get the most views? How can I get the most clicks? And how can I generate the most outrage? It's sensationalized, as Aaron, I think, was trying to say there.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that brought this to mind, to memory, to the forefront for me was recently Aaron Rodgers, actually.
Oh, interesting.
What's going on with him now?
This was a little while ago. This was when we were going to record earlier in January. Okay.
Still what?
So what happened in earlier January this year? The Epstein client flight list.
Oh, is he on it?
No.
Oh, dang it.
Okay. So right before the Epstein flight logs were released on the Pat McAfee show,
oh gosh,
he kind of insinuated, joked, whatever, that Jimmy Kimmel won't be happy about the flight logs being released. Kind of insinuating that Kimmel might be on it. Kimmel got upset, blah, 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 responded back. The next day, McAfee said, oh, Rodgers isn't going to be on the show anymore. So people on one side of the aisle were like, oh, yes, Rodgers got what he deserved. He's got kicked off, blah, blah, blah. And then, everyone on the, that was people on the leftness, to be obvious. People on the right were going, I can't believe this. This is a travesty. We need to fight back, blah, blah, blah. But, they're going, this is evil. It's censorship. It's all these things. And then they forget about one simple thing, though. Aaron Rodgers has been on this show for many years.
Mm-hmm.
What does he do every time his team is no longer playing football? He's off the show. So he wasn't kicked off the show because of the comments he made.
Oh.
He was kicked off. He wasn't kicked necessarily. He just left the show because his team was done. His team wasn't proceeding further on. Yeah. But on both sides, you had people writing articles, news articles, saying, this is what happened. This is and people making videos about it going, oh my goodness, we have to fight back against the censorship because Aaron can't speak his mind on a radio show. But little realizing that most of Aaron's, I guess you could say, odder comments, if you want to categorize it that way, but be about the vaccinations or whatever, have been on the Pat McAfee show. And they had kicked him off before this. Right. So why would this be the thing that tilts?
The deterrent.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing that kind of started bringing that to my brain and just kind of looking and be like, man, that just sucks. And the thing is, it's not one side or the other. It's both sides of the aisle that are over sensationalizing the news. And as I was kind of digging deeper on some stuff, I came across an article actually and it's on the Harvard Business Review of all places. And it was an article that they're going to publish a variety of things. It's not necessarily that they published it, that means it's, how do you say it? It's an endorsement of what that is. But they wrote an article basically saying the headline is why the news is not the truth. This was written back in 95. That long ago.
So much. Wow.
And so they cite some stuff, news and the culture of lying, how journalism really works. Who stole the news? Why we can't keep up with what happens in the world? Tainted truth, the manipulation of facts in America. And this was 95 before the news got even more polarized and political than it already is. And this first paragraph, I think, sums up a lot of my thoughts on this. And I agree with this. And here's the article. The U.S. press, like the U.S. government, is a corrupt and troubled institution. Corrupt not so much in the sense that it accepts bribes, but in a systemic sense. It fails to do what it claims to, what it should do, and what society expects it to do. I was like, yeah, that's probably true right there. And then, of course, keep going on with that, and you see other things um, like the New Yorker from 2023 talking about after the Vietnam and Watergate, this is back in like 76, right? 72% of the public said they trusted the news media. Today, the figure, this is February 23, is down to 34%. Now, they did emphasize among Republicans, it's down to 14%.
Wow.
Which, to be honest, there's probably valid reasons on some things. I'm not saying all things. And they point out that journalism is no longer a public service, it's a business. You're doing stuff to get views, clicks. You're trying to get all these things.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, that's probably true. And we're seeing multiple examples of even beyond the Aaron Rodgers thing. For example, and this is one, me and you, Josh, have messaged a couple times back and forth on that article, not the article, the video I sent you that Crowder released recently.
Oh, yeah, that one.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, Aaron, or not.
Which one?
About the who is hero 131 at mail.com.
Oh, I haven't finished it, but I started to look into that, but didn't get far.
But yeah, just even watching that, not concrete, things published, as much as they could. But even then, all of a sudden, people on both sides of the aisle going off and making tons of assumptions, tons of arguments, either for or against, and not letting the facts just be facts.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at this, I'm like, we are in trouble with news. And it really has gone to the point where media and the news just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Because either things are omitted for reasons to make whatever position you want better, or over exaggerated to make whatever you want better. Or if it's a bad story, when I say bad story, bad for a political position or something like that, it's not even published anywhere, mainstream, I should say.
Yeah.
Where it's going to get widespread play, widespread appeal, widespread viewership and attention to how important it really is.
It's kind of funny how, that's like the one thing that I would think would give people hope. How quickly stuff can get shared around. But when you're a little guy competing, that's now granted, if this little dude is right in what he's finding or whatever. With, I suppose, like censorship and all that the algorithm type crap that apparently is going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to compete with any of these big guys that are out there. Granted, it's all a lot of it's probably just a ton of junk anyways, but
yeah, and part of it is also our own result of this kind of social media influencer culture that we have, where
yeah.
social media stars, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
if you can call them that, are making their entire livings off of it.
Mm-hmm.
YouTubers are making their entire living off of it.
Yeah.
I think of for example, there's a guy locally to here, to Southeast Wisconsin. He makes his entire living online
The
on
quartering?
YouTube. Yeah. Guess what? He was one of those guys that when the Pat McAfee show thing kind of came around, he at least had a kind of a sensible take on it because he follows the show. So he's
Mhm.
like, what you guys don't realize, and he said this like the day before McAfee came out and said, hey, he wasn't kicked off for anything about this. And the day before that, he goes, Rodgers is done when his team is done. That's when Rodgers is done with the show.
Yeah.
So, he kind of had that more balanced approach on that, but everyone else outside that was having that whole
Losing their mind sort of thing.
yeah. Like for example, this one here, like I pulled up one tweet from someone, right, about this thing, right? Disappointed by McAfee's approach, Disney/ESPN won. Aaron Rodgers suspended from the Pat McAfee show after his comments on Jimmy Kimmel. McAfee said he was happy Rodgers wouldn't be back on the show because of the drama it caused. I was like, and then another person, Pat McAfee had Aaron Rodgers on show today. He showed ESPN who runs the show. Again, two sides, both incorrect on the same thing. But yet, guess what? That person who was like, Disney ESPN one, you want to guess how many views they got on Twitter? And they're verified, so that means they're eligible to get a part of ad revenue on Twitter based on number of views. So you want to guess how many views that tweet got?
I'm guessing millions.
Give me a number. Both of you.
7.
7 mil?
Sure.
Josh?
What was your number?
7 million.
This is ESPN we're talking about.
No, this is just a random guy. Just a random Twitter user
On
Twitter.
Hmm.
But since he's
3.5.
You're close, 2.4 million. But since he's verified,
yeah,
he's eligible for ad revenue from people viewing that tweet.
Wow.
So he picked an outrage thing to get views.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. Sounds right.
So that's what I'm like. And yeah. I don't know what sort of news culture we're going into, especially with an election cycle coming up here, where this is going to be every day. And as we kind of talked about in the previous episode, even looking, and this is where I know I'm going to unleash a rabid beast here called Brewer, called the Chaos Monkey. Look at stuff like January 6th, 2021, and on both sides on that. Look at stuff like, I don't know if you both remembered or not, this was maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago. There was a Vox article where the person was talking about like a shootout somewhere, and they showed the picture of the whole bullet sitting in the side of the wall. So that was shot from a gun and left there like that. I don't remember if either of you two remember that.
I remember that.
I do.
I think it was CNN just came out too. It may have not been CNN. It was more of a what we're going to call a left-based mainstream media, right? Big name. And it came out like January 5th. They're like, we've had more mass shootings in the United States than we have had days in the new year. And then you start looking into what they're actually talking about. I think 2 out of the 3 shootings, there was shots fired. And I think the only person that died was one of the suspects that became at large. And I think there was 1 or 2 other people that got hurt.
Right.
But they weren't even mass shootings. The thing that stood out to me is when you looked into it, right? You're looking at this and you're like, they think we're that dumb that we're going to go off of the title of the article, read 5 lines into it, and not investigate it for ourselves. It was a blatant lie because And for those of you who don't know this, there's not actually technically a true definition of a mass shooting. It's subjected to police departments and what they feel is worthy of putting out, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there's shootings that happen all the time. If uh, a gang member does a drive-by and he's got 2 Uzis or 2 MPs or whatever, and he sits there and he lights up and he kills 7 people, well, to most state standards, I think it's anything over 4 with the intention of continuation and killing, it's considered a mass shooting. And you don't hear about that from Chicago because that's a normal thing. It's nothing that's going to grab anybody's attention greater than what we have right now. But the fact that this mainstream media put out something and 2 to the 3 were something of some form of weight, and 3 out of the 5 were nothing greater than, "Oh, this guy had a gun and he walked into a place he shouldn't have. Turns out that he was a prior, convicted felon, and he should not have carried the firearm, but
Mhm.
because he had a firearm, he was gonna kill a bunch of people," right? So they're trying to paint this skewed reality when you do look into it, but when you absolutely look into it, the whole narrative and the narrative is always going to be something that it's an idea that you want to take away from a situation and it's going to multiply. That's a narrative.
Going back to the idea that it is sensationalized for clicks, it is sensationalized for spreading, and it's a revenue generating event. Yeah, and to your point, there isn't a definition of a mass shooting. Some places it's based on deaths, some places it's based on people who get injured. And then some places exclude gang violence, armed robberies, familicides,
Yeah, because it's so common.
terrorism.
Yeah.
Aaron, do you know what a familicide is?
Family.
Good job. I'm impressed, actually. Good job. So yeah, I yeah, there's no definition on it, and it just yeah, that's one example of things that drive me nuts. Just
Oh,
with
yeah.
that we people will massage things, let's say, to make things how they want.
And the other thing I think is, uh, I agree. And this is a little side tangent, but this is going off of the whole thing. Um, I don't agree with people, getting shot. Kids shouldn't have to be afraid of going to school, right?
Right.
They should be able to go to school, they should be able to have public education and be armed with information that allows them to question their authority, right? Which that doesn't happen. But I'm not even going down that route. That's a different route. At the end of the day, a kid should be able to go to school, achieve what they need to arm themselves to be able to excel in life, because that is one thing America does have, regardless of what people say, right? Is if you have good education and you apply yourself with that education to the different adventures in life or obstacles, you will achieve and you will prosper.
Maybe.
The definition of achieving and prosper is different, but at the end of the day, kids should go to school and come home. To school, come home. They should not have to. There should be no shooter drills. There should be no drills at all. That we shouldn't even need cops posted to deal with gang violence in schools. Right? That is a thing I agree on. But when you have people going into schools, shooting up schools, and then everybody is painted that a certain type of weapon is the deadliest on the planet, and it's not. You have some military leaders saying that, and it's not. If they want something more deadly, they don't train their troops to shoot 3 times to kill something. They know that they can hit it once and it drops dead, right? If we're going to get to specifics of carnage here,
Okay.
right? So we know that the gun that all media is painting as the bad gun is not actually the best gun to use in a situation like that. But what they're doing is they're creating a martyr out of a firearm. So they not only are telling you that it's something that it's not, now they're patronizing this firearm. So now that other people that want to do the same thing bite into that same cycle, right? So, hey, I want to go do a lot of damage. I'm going to a place without security, and I'm just going to buy this firearm, and I'm going to go do the duty. But then on the flip side, the answer is, okay, we have a problem. Let's do something with guns. Let's do something with law-abiding citizens and making it harder or punishing people, this and that. But at the same time, too, a quick answer would be, let's post security at the school. Let's give the bad guy a force to be reckoned with, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm going to tie this all together.
Okay.
America says they don't negotiate with terrorists, right? If you're willing to shoot up a school, I would consider you a domestic terrorist. You are willing to find innocent people that have no life threatening intentions to yourself, and you're willing to take their life, you should be deemed a domestic terrorist. So we have all these domestic terrorists just running around and nobody's stopping them. And we have the easiest way of preventing or putting a front up to them. But then you're also telling people that this is how you should perceive this item in our world as the bad guy. This is actually the bad guy, not the guy doing it, and not the people who are refusing to have an immediate answer for it, but this object, right? This thing
Mm-hmm.
that is made by humans. So the message that we see is we see something that is constantly malinformed and misdirected because they don't want to actually put out a solution. They don't want to actually, and you see this with everything else too. The idea is to keep us in this cycle of, is there an answer? This is the answer. Because if they point to the answer and we, the people, push for the answer, then they know that they can't utilize that scenario again to get more, again, clicks, likes, and views. It's a really nasty thing, and politicians play into it as well, because they know that if we are divided, they can guarantee. That's the thing. If they can't quantify us as people, as voters, then they can't create their projections. They can't figure out which politician is going to have a more likely chance of running the country this next time around. I'm going to let you interject.
No, I got nothing to interject
Oh.
right now. I was just pulling up actually data while you were talking because, yeah, I agree. It's just that continuous cycle there, right? Back and forth on things. They need something that's the new outrage. And of course, being a political year, we got enough outrage because they're pulling back up outrage back all the way back from that date you dare not speak of, January 6th, 2021, right? So this year is going to be full of outrage from there on various things. And it's interesting watching as people are finally starting to be able to see some of the footage released from that day. And some people starting to go, wait, what? That's what we're all upset about. That's what we're all mad about.
Well,
Some of these things, and like, for example, what do they call him? The shaman that stole the podium, he actually
the
went in
QAnon shaman.
the QAnon shaman, he actually went in places and maybe he shouldn't have gone in. Okay, fine, whatever. But we can all kind of agree that the confused little old lady probably shouldn't be treated the same way as someone who maybe was intentionally breaking into offices, whether because they're treating them all the same way essentially. And I'm just going like,
The here's my big issue with the whole January 6th thing.
Wait, before you get there, Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to interject at this point? Okay. I asked this because the fact that, like, when he was talking about when he said the word should be no gun safety drills and that, you kind of gave like a weird look. That's why I asked
I know.
I mean, in a perfect world,
That's
and
the
that's the point. Like
that's the
that,
thing. We
this
will never
should
have that.
be the reality that we could live in.
It would be cool
It would be nice, right? But
someday.
at the same time, too, and ask anybody listening, ask yourself this: what other country has a constitution and a bill of rights, and in there it says that we should allow to be armed.
No, we shouldn't or should?
We should be allowed to be armed. Exactly my point. Think about how many other countries have turned to do quote unquote democracy, which is not a reality. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic that takes on some of the ideas of a democracy.
What are you doing over there, Aaron? Are you
Switzerland?
What about Switzerland?
Is it Switzerland or I thought it was some S country. But where they actually like the government like issues guns for the people to have.
Yeah, I think everybody has a mandatory 2-year service, just like South Korea. I could be wrong.
I know that used to be the case. I'm not sure if that's still the same case for
But
Switzerland.
I don't know if it's actually written into law that they have the right to bear arms.
I don't know if it was the right to bear arms per se,
I
but
should have specified that. But yes, how many countries, I guess you could say, how many countries that have had American political influence, right, and have come from a different form of governing, have turned around and said, you know what, we need to make sure that our people have the right to bear arms.
Yeah.
I don't know any countries. I've never heard one. You hear countries, quote unquote, fighting for democracy. But at the end of the day, you don't ever really hear. And if anything, countries that do allow citizens to own firearms, they tend to pull that right back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to reference, Switzerland does not have any laws pertaining to owning guns, but about the acquisition of guns. And they are a shell issue country on the permit to buy and purchase a gun. So you need a permit to purchase a gun, but they are shall issue on the permit.
maybe I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I just remember seeing some video about some country that where the government, gives or like gives people guns or whatever. So he's comparing it to the like America and stuff, but it's not the same.
Oh, I know what
and
video you're talking
I
about.
can't remember.
Colleen Oyer, are we watching it off of that?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I have some data here.
Okay.
So this is based on the population back from 2017. That's the latest they have this data for. Okay. Switzerland. I'm going to give you the population there. 8,454,000 people. How many guns do you think are in circulation there?
3.5.
30.5 what? Mil? Aaron, got an idea?
I'll go with the same.
2.3 mil.
Okay.
So 27.6% of the population, essentially if it was a 1-to-1 ratio, would be gun owners there. That's not the worst in the world. Definitely not close to what America has, I will say. But they are probably, besides America, except for one other country, the two other countries, one of the highest places. Yemen is at 52.8%.
Oh, wow.
Gun to people, with 14.8 million guns in circulation for a population of 28 million. The next kind of closest on the list there was Uruguay. 1.1 million guns for a population of 3.4 million. And of course, in the United States, we have them all beat. 393.3 million guns for a population of 326 million people.
Yep, sounds right.
That's over one gun per person.
Heck yeah.
So, yeah, but yeah, Switzerland. Considering what?
1, 2.
Don't name off how many guns I have in this household.
Yeah, don't give away the secret. But yeah, so Switzerland, though, it does say has one of the most liberal gun laws in the world.
Hey, who? What?
Switzerland.
Oh,
but it's not a citizen right.
Right. It's not a right, but it is a shall issue issue. I
Issue.
cannot speak today.
Issue.
Permit.
Issue.
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 And you only need special permits for things like fully automatic guns. Other than that, you don't need anything besides that shell permit. Actually, the weapon law does recognize a qualified right to acquire, possess, and carry. I take that back. They do. But yeah, Switzerland will never come up there because
They can't. They can't possibly.
yeah,
And they've kept their neutrality for over 200 years. So
but yeah, I mean, as you continue looking through various things, like okay, the U.S. News, right? Let's talk about mass shootings. Going back to mass shooting thing, right?
oh, absolutely.
According to, I'm using one of their own news sources here.
Yep.
Okay.
I love when this happens.
According to Mother Jones, how many mass shootings were there last year in 2023?
2023.
Yeah.
I think I've seen a number like 357
Hmm.
or 360. I think somebody said that there was, or 390. There was like more mass shootings than there were days.
Well, according to Mother Jones, very left-leaning organization, website, news source, they maintain a database of mass shootings throughout the year. According to their database, which is publicly available on their website, there were 12.
Huh?
Your brain looks like it's malfunctioning.
What were they?
What were they?
Yeah.
All right. 1 second here.
One.
So, first off, there, because again, there's no definition as we talked about, right?
Yeah, mass shootings.
Their definition is 4 or more people
Mm.
that are injured or
Or
killed.
more
Okay.
injured.
At a given point in time.
Yep, 4 or more. Okay. So the shootings were the UNLV shooting in Las Vegas. That was near the end of December, early part of December of 23. The main bowling alley and bar shooting,
Mhm.
Jacksonville Dollar General store, Orange County biker bar, Philadelphia neighborhood, New Mexico neighborhood,
Mm.
Texas Outlet Mall,
Mm.
Louisville bank shooting, Nashville Christian school shooting,
Still unanswered.
Michigan State University, Half Moon Bay Spa, and the LA Dance Studio. Those are the 12 according to Mother Jones. Again, because their definition is states such that 4 or more.
Yep.
So again, which is it? Are we having more mass shootings than days in a year, or did we have 12? Which is it?
And this is part of me going back to the whole half truth is, yeah, you can tell the truth. Yeah, there are people dying. There are 12 scenarios where there are more than 4 people being shot and injured.
Mhm.
Right? And you can categorize that as a mass shooting if you so choose, because there's not an actual definition for it, right? But are those someone intentionally going in and just shooting people up for no reason because they're angry about something? Or is there another motive? Is it gang violence? Is it relationship, right? What's the motive? I think the other thing too that people look at is it's so easy to compile numbers that you can rely on, right? Right.
Mhm.
Because obviously there's the FBI statistics that get published every year, every other year they get updated or whatnot. And you can take, like, for example, I can sit there and go, I can look at this and I can go, you know what? You know who the worst people on our streets are? It's white people. You know that 6 million white people get arrested every year? There is no other race in the US that gets arrested as much as white people. They are absolutely the worst because they obviously are on the back of a squad car. I mean, anybody can take that number, sit there, splat it, and paint it, right?
I wasn't sure where that was going at first.
Well, no, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, you can take the number, but then, yeah, you can make this blanket statement that has truth to it. Yes, they there is no other race in the US that it's arrested as much as white people, right? You're not wrong. But to say that because they're the most arrested, that they're also the most violent, the most dangerous, the worst to have on the street, there's no backing to it because you're not actually talking about the evidence you're bringing forth. So at that point, a half truth is a lie.
Yeah, they're using one data point to make a bunch of assumptions.
And this is where we can see some groups, they'll sit there and they'll pull shooting data to where one or two people maybe get shot, compile it together and say, "Oh yeah, we've had more mass shootings than we've had days in the US. What's going on?"
Yeah. And I have to give I can't believe I'm saying about to say these next few words here. I have to give Mother Jones a little bit of credit here. Back in 20
He's turned.
No. Here's why. I want you to hear why I'm saying this first, okay? Back in 2015, they wrote this article. No, there has not been a mass shooting every day this year. In 2015, they tried to pass this thing that there were 355 mass shootings that year, right? And they go, no. If you actually look at the data, blah, 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 they go, there were 4. They go, or if you count using 3 or more instead of 4 or more, then they go, okay, then there were 6. I was like, wait a minute. They're actually saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah. And then on the flip side too, and this is another thing, right? Again, a narrative is a picture they want to paint to get you to respond a certain way, right?
Mhm.
How many potential mass shootings, right? Where somebody's running in, right? We had one with a mall. There was one earlier in the year, there was a mall to where a kid ran back into the mall with his firearm and shot the suspect,
Right.
killed him. So he probably hit a few people. If I remember correctly, I think he maybe killed 1 or 2, and I think he shot a few more and actually, wounded him pretty good. But the kid ran back in and shot him. But that's not the intention. We want you to be afraid. We don't want you to feel safe, and we want you to respond a certain way to a message that we're presenting to you. We don't want you to feel comfortable that there are people you don't know that are willing to put their lives on the line for you because I know it's good, right? If the message is negative. At the end of the day, if you read something and you end up having a sour taste in your mouth, you probably should look more into the data than what you're being told about.
And you should probably look at that same story from multiple angles.
Exactly.
One of the things I don't know what process you run your news through, Josh.
All independent.
Yeah, but so what I do is like any news story that comes in, I don't care if it's independent or not. Okay, because independent can have bias too.
Oh yeah,
Let's be honest.
And that's where you wait to see if another independent news, how their take on the story is.
So I run everything through a couple things. First, I run through NewsGuard. NewsGuard though has been having a little more problems the past year.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
But I also run everything through ground.news. Are you familiar with that service?
Nope.
So what I like about that is they're honest up front for the most part, where they'll be like, for example, I have Mother Jones pulled up on my screen. They say, hey, according to our thing, it says Mother Jones is left leaning, and they get this from a couple different places that kind of give the news site rating where they're left, center, right. But then the other reason is I can pull up an article in here. So I find an article and headline, whatever, and it will say, here's an article from a left leaning site, a little less left, center, right, more right, etc. So it'll give it from that same article from multiple perspectives. So I can quickly tab through and be like, and then you can easily see how your political bias that you have can help you, where it gives you that little blind sight to certain things. And it'll even, like, if there's articles that only pop up with only, like, let's say left side or only right side news sources, they'll say, "Hey," they'll put like a little warning, be like, "Hey, there might be some bias going
Yeah.
on this article," but that's it. They won't stop you from reading it. You can pull
Yeah.
it up and then boom, okay, boom, 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 and then I could tap right through all of them, see them all, and kind of get a little more of a rounded view of what's going on.
Yep. I think one of the things I have noticed is story swapping. It appears, right? Again, this is my opinion. What I've seen story swapping, as I'm calling it, and what you see is you see that a certain news hits the
Mhm.
media and it swaps to something else almost overnight. Like, obviously, you go through the course of 3 weeks, you look back and you go, "Oh, wait, that happened 3 weeks ago?" Like, obviously, our ability to comprehend time is, you know, as I put it, the amount of technology we have to make our time in life more leisurable,
Yeah.
we still don't have enough time. So, and this is where I jump to this phrase, the convenience of technology is actually inconvenient.
Yeah, and it makes it real easy to continue your blind spots in that.
Correct.
The reason being, once the algorithm kind of gets you into a particular flow,
Yep.
particular frame of things, it goes, "Hey, guess what? You're engaging with this, so I'm going to continue showing you things on this. I'm going
Absolutely.
to continue feeding you this." And guess what that does? That feeds a perpetual rage machine
Yep.
in your own, not only you, but in everyone else as well.
Again for clicks.
Yeah. You know, it knows Aaron Johnson over here loves ABR. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna start showing, well, please don't do that. He's too white for that. He's too white for his hat to the side. They're gonna okay, that's fine. Um, they're gonna show him some stuff about ABR. He's gonna click it, and then he's gonna to click more, and then it's gonna say, "Hey, maybe suggest this on ABR. Maybe suggest this." I use YouTube to watch the song, the music video of the song we're reviewing for
Yep.
this month, right? Guess what now is populating my stupid feed because I watched that stupid music video more than 20 times. More and more Electric Callboy. It's like, "Oh, you interacted with this 20 times or so. That means you must like this. We're gonna give you more. We're gonna give you more. We're gonna give you more." And guess what? It keeps feeding you down that path that you're
Yep.
going. And it's amazing. What I'll do is once in a while, I'll go into YouTube, I'll go incognito mode so it doesn't show me what it thinks I'm gonna like. I get a completely different YouTube.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And going off of that whole, convenience of technology is inconvenient and the whole algorithm aspect, what I felt like I was seeing is when a story stopped being so attractive, right,
Mhm.
to the population, they'd throw something else in the way. Or if a story started to get too much traction, they swap it out with something else. Because one of two things, there's either a political tie to the story and they're trying to preserve something, or they don't want all the answers to come out right away. So they swap to something else. They bring the answers later. It's kind of like a card in their back pocket to keep you hooked. And then when you have the whole algorithm aspect as well, now they're trying to keep you divided. And that's ultimately, I think, the biggest thing I fear of with AI is the ability to figure out your sensitive spot, for say, as a person and exploit that to keep you with a certain type of perception. So,
You awake, Mr. Johnson? Okay. Have you, based on that, have you ever looked, either one of you, have you ever looked what, because if you don't have Facebook account, you still have a Facebook profile. Did you know that? Okay, you knew that. Josh, did
what?
you know that?
No,
If
I
you,
did not know that.
yeah, if you do not have a Facebook account, you still have a Facebook profile essentially, where
Wow.
they have all this data on you, Mr. Brewer, about who you are, what you like, what you think, even if you don't have an account. Okay. There is a way to go if you have an account, you can go into Facebook to see all this data, and it'll say, like, based on all this we know about you, it'll go like, "We think you're single, we think you're straight, we think you're this, we think you're that," and they'll make all these assumptions based on things that you have viewed and interacted with on the web, and that's where you have an account or not.
Hmm.
Well, I know about that. I didn't yeah, I knew that, obviously Google has all this information about you, and obviously YouTube will have this
Yep,
information about you.
but
How does
if
Facebook have the information unless they buy it illegally? Or here's the other thing I don't agree with.
they have it through ads.
Information harvesting,
Yeah,
to me personally, should be its own box. It legally should not be built into the terms of service.
that's why you have,
That
like,
9-page thing you have to
well,
read
that's
whenever you
also why
sign
you
up.
have stuff like the European Union with the GDPR and that. They're a lot more strict on data collection and management than we are in the US. We're a lot
Yeah.
more lenient on things. A lot more personal information can be siphoned off. Also doesn't help that we have a bunch of companies that have this data that we hand over for whatever reasons, and then they're broken into. Do either of you use stuff like Have I Been Pwned?
No, but I know there's stuff out there where, like, you can put your email in
Right.
and see how many websites
Well,
that, it's flagged and
so like Have I Been Pwned is a great website. You put your email in, right? And it'll and any other information you want to. You don't have to put anything in, but you can put whatever you want into. And then it'll show if you pop up in any data breaches. And it'll say, hey, like, hey, Josh, you showed up in this data breach. They got your social security number, they got your phone number, they got your address. I got one of those recently. Or a site that I did legitimate business with was breached, and they got, like, all my info short of my social security number.
oh, you don't even need the social security number to do damage anymore.
I know. That you can buy online. You
Well, I
can
mean,
buy
you
that.
just need a credit card and you can reverse all that.
Yep. So, yeah. And then going back to your statement about AI, and how that will be all I remember, what was it? Yeah, New York Post, this is longer than I even thought, 2022 was talking about Biden administration working with social media to censor statements they deemed as misinformation. So that was the government itself censoring speech online that they deemed as misinformation. Right now, it's was just the COVID, but what else will be misinformation in the future is
Well,
the
one of the
question.
things also, um, the feds, but just recently something came out. The feds said something out to banks, talking about recording anything that aligns with Trump through its supporters.
Yeah. Did you see all the items that were on the list?
I have not.
Do you want to guess what some of them are?
The Bible's one of them.
Yes. Did you know about that, Aaron? Are you
No.
tired, Aaron?
No.
Are you hungry?
Mm-mm.
You're not hungry?
Mm-mm.
I'm hungry. Yes, the Bible's one of them, but at the same time too, I think it was, this is going back, I think 2 years ago now. The DHS, worked with the university, and this university, it was, I think, a sociology department or something like that. Anyways, this part of the university was tracked with establishing, um, domestic terror tier threats,
Okay.
right? Like the KKK is in there, and the Proud Boys are in there. Tier 5, Catholics, Christians, Jews. And so they were hiring them on. Now some claim it was just an experiment, right?
Right.
But they were hiring them on, right, as a thing. So they could create and compile this data. Apparently, just recently there was something else released. I don't think it was the DHS. I think it may have been the FBI, but it was talking about, no, it wasn't that. It was something, another 3-letter abbreviation branch, and they compiled a bunch of, this is YouTube, this is podcast stuff.
Right.
They compiled a bunch of names that they felt that the content that they were publishing was obviously Trump leaning,
Mm-hmm.
far right wing,
Yep.
and some of these podcasts on there are liberal standing that have conservative commentators come on. And some of these guys are like, I'm getting thrown in this ringer, and all I have is somebody voicing their opinion, and I'm now on a blackmail list essentially.
Yeah.
This kind of thing is it's not this is not like when it's a document that comes from a 3-letter abbreviated agency, this is legit stuff they're using to create laws, to enforce laws. This is stuff that cannot be what's the word I'm looking for? Um, like the ATF. The ATF at any given point in time can choose how to interpret a law.
Yeah.
They can change what they want. The amount of time, the amount of months it'll take before the Supreme Court can get their hands on it, make a ruling on it, and it goes into effect that is a violation of our rights. It's like half a year or more. So these agencies can use these stuff that they create. They rely on outside sources to interpret for them to enforce things. I mean, look at the whole thing. I know some people will realize, but look at the whole thing with Trump and the Russia collusion, the fake dossier, the law firm that got traced back to Hillary Clinton, and the money channeling of that. It was a fake dossier, right?
Yep.
It was investigated by the Intelligence Committee. It was a fake dossier. There was a legit money trail that linked back to Hillary Clinton. So this is candidate persecution, right? This is wrong. This is illegal. But then the FBI was corrupt enough, they didn't check their data. Nobody down the chain of command questioned this. They used it to wiretap, they used it to investigate personal information and activities. And at the end of the day, they found nothing, right? As much as people say, oh, Trump was in bed, at the end of the day, if you stand before the court of law and you have blank evidence, no evidence, or lack of evidence to convince a jury, then you're not found guilty.
So you know what's funny? I was reading an article. There's actually a case up to the Supreme Court where the Supreme Court potentially has, as part of this case, the ability to redefine how three-letter agencies are able to function
It should be.
and basically extrapolate laws from other things.
Yeah, it should be.
So
The I get and again, this goes to a lot of other stuff, right? Right? You know, everything kind of start out with a good intent, and then it gets sour over time because it's long past due its expiration date.
right.
And this comes from somebody. Hey, I deal with the FAA, and the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration's job is to, on behalf of Congress, to ensure that our airways stay safe. There's a disadvantage. There is so much work, and we are changing technologically so quick, the FAA can't keep up, which is preventing technology from hitting
Mm-hmm.
our airways. Now, I'm going to say skies, but at the same time, too, they are tasked with determining the legal terms, operations, interactions. That's their job on behalf of Congress. So an original standpoint, having people specialize in a certain sector, right, of the U.S. to do that bidding on behalf of Congress and the Senate, right, the legislative
Mm-hmm.
branch, that makes sense. But to your point, when they have the ability to reinterpret the very laws that they write or the very laws that their brothers in the legislative branch write, now that's wrong. Especially, there's a thing called, you may know what it's called.
I have to have a description first.
It's like a civil service protection.
Okay.
It's where because you're a part of one of these branches, you are deemed a civil service. You can't just get fired. It was along the lines of that. I can't remember exactly how it worked. But at the end of the day, the president of the country just couldn't come in and boop, you're fired. They're protected. They're protected under a certain law that it has to go through the proper channels.
Nah, it doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't.
All the unions and all that to get in the way there.
Exactly same thing.
But yeah, so back to, are you okay, Aaron? I know we're yo-yoing a little bit here, but I'm like looking up information as you're
Yep.
Doing your thing. Back to the thing about them monitoring your bank accounts. We talk Bibles, religious texts, right?
Yep.
You want to guess what other stuff is kind of in there that it can be looked at for extremism? And I'm saving this.
Buying an American flag.
I'm going to save this news article so that way I can make sure that I include it in the links. Going to certain stores, just going and purchasing anything at those stores. Want to guess what type of stores? Well, they're big name stores. Dick's Sporting Goods.
Oh yeah.
Cabela's.
Yep.
Bass Pro Shops.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything that has more of a right wing or quote unquote gun leaning stance.
Right. So the other things that they said, and they literally said, hey, banks, go search in like Zelle, search for Trump or MAGA. They also said, hey, we should also look for indicators like transportation charges, bus tickets, rental cars, plane tickets for travel areas with no purpose, or the purchase of books, including religious text, and subscriptions to other media containing extremist views. Here was the thing that was interesting in this article, and it's in this article. I haven't had ton of time to just like research it over and over to see, but per the person they interviewed, it says this: the effort by FinCEN to work with law enforcement to assist with their post January 6 efforts began under the previous administration.
Huh?
That's
Say it again.
The effort by this is the direct quote that they have in the article that they quoted this person as saying. The effort by FinCEN to work with law enforcement to assist with their post January 6 effort began under the previous administration. So what does that mean? Don't know, but that also means have to look that up more, right?
Yeah.
And this was also after what bank voluntarily, without warrant, gave purchase data on their cards to the FBI.
Without warrant.
Yep. They gave purchase data on anyone who purchased anything in Washington, D.C. between January 5th and January 7th, 2021 on both their credit and debit card network. Bank of America.
Huh.
So if you were anywhere in January, in DC area between January 5th and 7th, you purchased anything, the FBI got a copy of all your transaction history without a warrant.
That's crazy.
They voluntarily gave that data to them. It wasn't just like the transaction data, it was the list of individuals with their transactions as well. So as of this recording, we're recording on 128 at this point, right? There are certain people who have until 131 to respond back to Congress so they can do a formal hearing on this, on what is going on with this. So maybe by the time this comes out, that hearing will have occurred, but who knows?
This goes back to your original thing. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and his response was traditional.
Traditional. How is his response? Well, you'll get to it. Go on.
Pertaining to January 6th. Traditional response.
Okay.
Going back to this whole news thing, right?
Okay.
people sit there and they go, "Oh, well, there's no true collusion. There's no true information sharing. There's no true, like, there's not this true motive, right? Right? There's not this. You can't draw a line. You can't make a connection." TNI. I encourage you all to look up TNI for yourself. Trusted News Initiative.
Okay.
It's a part of the BBC,
Okay.
and there is it's a channeling aspect. So somebody made a compilation of it, and people will quickly jump, "Oh, that was AI," or "Oh, this was that." At the end of the day, there's only one video that I'm aware of, and somebody took news castings of people talking about the vaccine. Are you
I,
familiar with it?
I think I think I know what. Go on, describe it. I think I know what you're
Um,
talking about.
and it's an overlay, and it starts, and you hear like they start talking about something related to COVID,
Uh-huh.
and then the next one shows, and it sounds like they're saying the same thing, but it sounds like they're slightly behind. Then it keeps going, and it keeps going, and before you know it, the entire screen is filled with all these news organizations saying almost the exact same thing. Um, I can't attest if that's real or not. That there could be a level of manipulation involved in that, but
Okay, that's not the one I saw.
okay.
The one I saw, it was very similar. And I played this, and Aaron, remember this, Aaron, where they were talking about on the local news channels, and they started like the same thing, start with one and then just added layer after layer after layer. But they're talking about how disinformation is a problem and we need to trust the news and that. And it was just literally,
Okay.
and it was this basically the same
Yeah,
thing.
it's the same message, and to some, they would say that that stems from the Trusted News Initiative. And ideally, what it is, it's there's a centralized, channelized, because all these news organizations are owned by a select few people,
Yeah.
right? Once you find out who's paying the paychecks, it comes all this. There's I don't know, it was there like no, it was like maybe 3 or 4 corporations own all news, all main big time news in the United States.
Right.
Um, but how do I put it? All right, here's a good idea, right? I'm trying to think how to word this without taking too long.
Why you think that? I'm gonna play what I'm talking about here.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
We are concerned about trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
the sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 In that main chorus, when it was like all the voices at
Jumbled.
once, WISN 12 from Wisconsin was in there. It was like the third or fourth square that joined in the chorus.
A surprise face.
I know. Surprise. Shock Pikachu.
Yeah, right. Think about this. If you played sports, you're on a team, right? you may not be as good as, basketball, baseball, volleyball, softball, whatever, kickball, whatever it is, right? You may not be the best player on the team, but at the end of the day, you have one goal, and that's to win. And ultimately, you're only facing one opponent,
Mm-hmm.
and that's your opponent that must lose. When we think about, the algorithms, political landscapes, the skewed information that we see, the misinformation from those that claim that misinformation is happening, um, it's all stems back to a level of division, right?
Right.
And if you only have two options, and if you only have one or two things that one of those options really speaks to you on, you're forced to vote for that person. Um, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's still happening. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's still happening. Oh,
So, yeah, kind of going back to that Trust and News Initiative and all this other stuff, right? It reminds me, Aaron, I'm sure you remember this when we talked about this. The the news organizations that said they came together in a shadow campaign to save the 2020 election by fortifying it. Do you remember reading anything about that, Josh?
no, I don't.
Oh, that was all like 2021 early on. Um, it's called there was a piece out there called "The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election." It was a story published after the author gained access to the inside story of the conspiracy to save the 2020 election based on access to the group's inner workings, never before seen documents and interviews with dozens of those involved from across the political spectrum. If you have not read it, I would recommend going to see it. It's out on time.com. I'll include a link in this article or in this podcast as well in the show notes for it. But yes, it literally is. It's on time.com and it's called "The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election." And it is terrifying, I think is a word to say, reading how these different news organizations and other political leaders essentially came together to say, this is what we want for our election. But yet all we heard about from the news is, oh, this is the most secure. This was the most
Oh, it absolutely was not the most secure.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was they just did a major poll and they found I'm gonna knock the number down. Like what was it? About 40% of people voted ballot drop off. A minimum of 10% based on the polls done. I think it was Rasmussen's or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
10% the votes are disqualified. But it was all done anonymously. So you can't actually know who voted illegally or not. Most people said that they would fill in the boxes on behalf of somebody else, or the biggest offender is voting in states that you no longer resided in. So you were voting twice. So,
yep.
Yeah, but it was the safest. It was absolutely the safest, and the real number of violations approaches more of the. Once you include all the different violations, I think you're about 40%. So about half of the ballot drop off, and some people didn't even realize what they were doing was illegal, and that's the problem, right? It's not whether or not they did the illegal thing; it's whether or not they knew they were doing an illegal thing, which means they can easily be convinced to do something else that is just as illegal if they don't actually know what they're doing is illegal or not. So you can easily say, "Hey, everybody, bring your ballots, here, and we'll all sign them together or something."
Mm-hmm.
And right, you just don't. It's
yeah. But yeah, if you haven't read that article, because they talk in there how this group, this little cabal, they're the ones who went to Congress to steer COVID relief money to election administration. How they met weekly for 2.5 hours to basically figure out ads to promote to get people to vote the way they wanted, how they could do these various things. and how they could whatever they needed to do. So it's a very interesting article where they kind of go through everything and say, yeah, this is how we made the 2020 election happen the way we wanted.
And the ironic thing is, and this is where I talk about it. If somebody mentions January 6th and you roll your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
you're a part of the problem because you've allowed that level of persuasion to automatically impact you before the evidence. Most of the time, if something happens politically, we won't know the truth about it until 4 years later. And that's just a reality. Once you talk about investigations, and then you have to deal with the press, and then you have to deal with if things are classified, you have to wait for them to become unclassified. Well, whatever it may be, the minimum is about 4 years before you actually know the truth or most of the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the point to where the question of whether or not it was right or wrong stands out, or who was right and who was wrong stands out enough that it's enough evidence. There's plenty of people. Anyway, just going back to the guy that I was talking about, I had mentioned January 6th, and he kind of rolled his eyes and he says, well, I understand people voting for him the first time, and I understand for people voting for him the second time. But the third time around, I don't see why people have the right to vote to. The way that I'm looking at it, right? If he truly did something illegal, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can pin him on it.
Right.
If there's actual evidence that he has done something illegal, they can pin him for it.
You know what's kind of funny that they try to pin him on Trump, because he kind of said like the stand down, not at the January 6th stuff, but in other times where he's like stand down but stand by sort of deal.
Yeah.
Again, go back and read this article. They had organized protesters ready to go at the drop of a hat, and they said stand down but stand by. They use that same phrasing with their protesters, and they're like, yeah, this is what they said. Let me pull this up right here. We want to be mindful when was the right time to call for moving masses of people into the street. As much as they were eager to mount a show of strength, mobilizing immediately could backfire and put people at risk. But so none of those protests after the election, at least, from the left side, were organic. They were called for, organized, and
Nothing
controlled
Yeah.
by this lovely little cabal.
The one of the things I think the American people should be more afraid at how the initial perception was created. Because if you can do this with one political candidate, you can do this with any political candidate.
Mm-hmm.
You can persecute without trial. When people sit there and and you always hear this, our democracy is at risk. Our democracy. You want real democracy, actual unfiltered democracy as they paint it, you will regret it. It is mob rule, right? Back in the day, when the kings would leave it up to the mob chose the punishment. The mob chose if you lived or died because of your crime. And if you were painted as somebody that they should hate, they would hate you, no question. They didn't care about having true information. If you're told that you killed kids, raped women, pillaged other people's homes, I'm off with his head. Off with his head. Hang him.
Mm-hmm.
Drown him. Whatever it is. Mob rule is not what you want. But the fact that the initial release of information was the only footage that they could have that shows any form of violence. That was the initial release of footage. The claim that the police officer died out there, and he didn't, he died at the hospital.
Right.
Right? The fact that they did that should tell you that they don't care about the truth. They want you to have a certain perception. The fact that 300 some odd hours of tape footage got released later and shows more peace, more conversations, more interactions with the state police officers, Capitol police officers, who's not to say that there were a few people that were handpicked, that were given the opportunity? Yet these people, so for example, it's just me spitballing on this part right here, but it's called the wolf pack mentality. Wolf pack mentality is a common thing. Police are aware of it. Police use it to their advantage to try to knock down protests. If it's a peaceful protest, they just keep an eye on it. But as soon as the protest starts to get a little bit more into a fracas, stuff starts going, stuff starts getting damaged, things look unclean, they target the alpha. The alpha is somebody that just simply is out there that quickly gets everybody else riled up. They're just an irrational leader in a protest. If you put enough of those guys in one spot, you will have violence. You will. And if you can orchestrate that, oh yeah, you can easily, I can totally see, and maybe these select guys knew each other and collaborated themselves, and maybe that's the reason why we saw one spot of the entire Capitol surrounding be so violent, right? But nobody knows. Nobody's allowed to know. Nobody knows exactly how these hearings are proceeding. We just know that some people have been in jail for years without an actual fair trial yet.
Right.
So how do we know that it wasn't started? And actually, there was stuff released by the FBI, and there's been stuff leaked by police departments to where when a protest happens, they specifically put stuff into play to antagonize and to rile up the protesters to be able to make arrests.
Yeah, that's been heavily claimed from a lot of people, from Tim Pool to many others. Like even what was it? I forget the name of the group, but like it was like some Patriot First group or something like that name. Like they were all caught, and this is why they're like, oh yeah, why are they were all on like on the New York subway wearing like ski masks and bandanas over face, like just completely hiding their face, right?
Yep.
And he's like, why are protesters who would be proud to be Americans and all this be covering up their face? And basically it came down to, oh yeah, that's a lot of interesting that they're maybe associated with the government. And then there were other protests that this same group performed at, and they were caught on video loading into pickup trucks with government license plates. So it's like,
I mean, it stands true, and a lot of people would say that this is just hearsay and this is lies and stuff, because there's two types of people, right? There's somebody who is fed kind of, and everybody leans one way or the other. At the end of the day, everybody does. Nobody is truly neutral, right?
right.
It's in us, right? As Christians, we know that we have this calling to be a part of something greater than ourselves. Why do you guys, for those of you who don't realize, why do you think sports teams exist?
Back to the Roman Colosseum days.
Exactly. Back to the Roman Colosseum. When the emperor was doing something that pissed off the people and didn't please the people, where something was going on in society and the people were unhappy, he'd throw them games. He'd entertain the people. He'd distract the people. We just found a way to privatize that and make a lot of buku bucks off of it, but it keeps everybody occupied, 4 months out of the year, depending on what sport you're into. But at the end of the day, we're single-sided usually, right?
Right.
If you made everything black and white, I'm going to lean more right than I will left, right? That's just me. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And there's nothing wrong if somebody leans more left. Based on your experiences and this and that, you're going to have a little bit more of a priority over some things and topics and things that you see and hear and how you interact with things. That's just how it is. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy how many people get riled up at just the mention of certain things they know nothing about. They just get, they just so-and-so. What? how dare you say that here? Yeah. But it's, again, if you're not a single-sided person, you're that other kind of person who doesn't want to admit that there's actually negativity in this world. I knew several people like that. They think that, America would never be like that. We would never vote people like that into office. We would, and I get it. I'd love to imagine that too, but that's not the case. Somebody said this once. I can't remember what it was. It was a podcast I was listening to, and he goes, "Think about it this way. You guys are aware of the American war machine, right?
Oh yes. Johnson?
The American war machine?
That sounds familiar.
The American war machine is a thought, right? It's a thought followed by actions. Okay. The American war machine. The backbone of the American war machine is research and development. To get research and development, you have to have funding from the government. Private companies need funding from the government to make weapons of mass destruction. Check this out. If there's no wars, there's no need for funding. If there's no wars that you need new destructible weapons for, there's no need for research and development. Therefore, there's no weapons being made, no companies at play. At the end of the day, as long as there's a conflict and there's a war and America is involved in it, Congress will subject funding for weapons. Private companies will profit, and we paint it as this big, we're being patriots, we're helping the world, we're spreading democracy, we're keeping peace. At the end of the day, it's just this circle that keeps going, right? Somebody said, now take that and think about that with police force. Think about that with the FBI. Think about that with the CIA. Imagine if you eliminated crime. You'd have no reason for police. You'd have no reason for an investigative bureau. The Central Intelligence Committee obviously would be dwindled down because now you don't have to worry about domestic terrorism. But you don't want that. You need to keep funding for your police departments. You need to keep, so this is more of a...
even not just even, I don't know necessarily 100% police departments, but the war machine. Yeah, there's a lot in there.
There is. And it's not something you can easily explain or answer. And could you ever not have it? Probably not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's a necessary evil, but it's an unfortunate evil that exists.
Yeah. And that's been like kind of, criticized all the way even back through like art mediums and that, I'll say like TV shows and that, all the way even back to Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Korean War.
Yeah.
That's why I think shows like MASH resonate with people so much, as they were sick of war, but we haven't stopped.
People don't want war.
We're on the verge of World War III.
Leaders want war.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's one other thing I wanted to mention too. Just lost it.
He just lost it.
Oh, well, one of the things that I think should be illegal.
What's that?
Right.
All right.
Obviously, it doesn't matter because it'll probably get violated anyways. Going into that whole topic, right?
Yep.
You can get pulled over for suspicion without doubt, right? The cop sees you swerving and out, he can pull you over and say, well, I thought I had reason to believe that you could be drunk because you were swerving, right? You could be intoxicated. You could be under the influence.
Okay.
Right? And then he can push to see if that is true, right? Whether or not you actually swerved, right? That obviously will be something that'll be channeled, because at the end of the day, that is something that will be overlooked if you actually are under the influence.
Yeah, but first they got to do something to prove that you are.
Exactly. However that is. If it's the little walk of shame, if it's a breathalyzer, if it's, hey, you're not being cooperative, I don't feel like you can properly communicate with me, I need to take you downtown, we need to do a blood sample. I have a reason to believe that you might be on crack or cocaine. However they do it. I've never been subjected to that, so hopefully I don't ever have to be.
Oh, of course you haven't been. You're white.
I know.
Both of you are white.
I can wear crack and nobody will know.
More so Aaron. He seems a little more whiter pale than you.
Yes. But I think, and this is going to it, right? If there's no violence, if there's no crime being committed, then you don't really need a police department, right?
Yeah, we're never getting there, but
here's my point. I don't believe police officers should be able to do drug deals. And they do. I can sit down in your car. I can have communications with him, right? I have no actual concrete evidence that he's going to sell me any drugs, but I can sit down in the car. I can give him the opportunity to commit a crime. And in the process of committing that crime, I'm now the witness and I can call in the guys and you're arrested.
I don't know what all the limitations and rules around that are. So I would like to know what that is.
It's just pretty much an undercover agent setting themselves
but
up
I'm
for
sure
a deal.
I'm sure there's limitations, there's processes that they have to go through to do that. What that is, I don't know, but regardless. All right. Aaron, you have been exceedingly quiet on this episode. Is that because the Chaos Monkey's here? You can speak, sir.
Oh, yeah.
I say the only way that camera software is going to go back to you is if you speak and say
make sound.
Exactly. All right. Do you have anything to say on any of this that the Chaos Monkey has brought our way?
It's a lot of chaos.
Yeah, there's a lot of chaos there. All right. Josh, I'm going to regret this. Any final closing statements?
Nope, negative.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest. So yeah, that was, I don't know how many episodes I'm going to split that into. That might be 2 episodes. So this might be episodes 2 and 3 here, where we rejoined by the Chaos Monkey. But join us for the next one, where we get to hear about Aaron's, I guess, one of his favorite bands.
No.
I
just enjoy.
I get to hear about the style music that they say that they like.
See, I like
Don't give too much away.
I'm not going to give that too much
I
away.
enjoy.
And the Chaos Monkey joins us on that one, by the way.
Yes.
And
I enjoy the change from pop to metal. I enjoy that dynamic.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. I got nothing else. This won't be interesting to see how AI summarizes it. So talk to y'all later. See you next week. Have a good one.